The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you and daunting me. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoking gasoline. It's just a ghost of you and me. Of you and me.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr. And with me as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How is everybody tonight?
Tonight's show is going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. And it's probably going to be a little bit controversial for some people. But it'll be very interesting. I'm going to give you an article tonight that comes from CuriousMoss.com. And it's got some pretty cool stuff in it. It's not super recent. It's from 2019. But it's extremely interesting stuff. The headline is Reincarnation is Real, and human consciousness is contained within the universe, imply experts. Scientists say reincarnation exists and consciousness is contained in the universe. It was written by Ivan Petrovic, and it was published May 7th, 2019, but it was updated on January 15th of 2021. So they updated the information in this fairly recently, within like the last month. Experts suggest reincarnation is real, and consciousness is a form of energy contained within our body and released into the universe after life, until a new adequate host is found. Reincarnation is the philosophical or religious concept that the non-physical essence of a living being starts a new life in a different physical form or body after biological death. It is also called rebirth or transmigration in different cultures around the world. But scientific evidence to support the idea that reincarnation exists is almost non-existent. Despite this, millions of people from different cultures still believe reincarnation is real. Some even claim to have evidence of past lives. A book titled Life After Life, a scientific investigation of children's memories of previous lives, written by Dr. Jim Tucker, may offer more than just theory. According to Dr. Tucker's book, reincarnation is real, and it's all thanks to consciousness being energy on the quantum and subatomic level. This is contained in our bodies during life, but is not part of them. Dr. Tucker interviewed around 2,500 young people who allegedly had signs of reincarnation. They remember memories of things they had not experienced yet and had scars of birthmarks that supposedly were near identical to the person they reincarnated from. The key to understanding reincarnation is consciousness, or at least so they say. Researchers like Dr. Tucker suggest that quantum mechanics can allow consciousness to continue living on after death. To understand the subject further, we turn to Dr. Robert Lanza, an American medical doctor and scientist, currently head of Astellas Global Regenerative Medicine. Dr. Lanza is also the scientific officer of the Astellas Institute for Regenerative Medicine, and the man who coined the word biocentrism. Biocentrism presupposes that consciousness is released into the cosmos by means of subatomic particles after death. This gave Dr. Tucker further room to develop his theory, suggesting this stream of energy can eventually find a new host. Some leading scientists in the past, like Max Planck, who's the father of quantum theory, said that he viewed consciousness as fundamental and that matter was derived from it. So in that case, it would mean that consciousness would not necessarily be dependent on a physical brain in order to survive, and could continue after the physical brain and after the body dies, explained Dr. Tucker. In these cases, it seems, at least on the face of it, that consciousness has then become attached to a new brain and has shown up as past life memories. Dr. Tucker explained that one example of reincarnation is the case of a 2-year-old boy named James Lineger, who was interviewed in the case study. The boy was apparently obsessed with airplanes and began having nightmares where he was in a plane crash. During the day, he talked about this plane crash and said that he had been a pilot and that he had flown off of a boat. And his dad asked him the name of it, and he said Natoma. And he said he had been shot down by the Japanese, that he had been killed at Iwo Jima, and that he had a friend on the boat named Jack Larson, explained Dr. Tucker. Well, it turns out that there was an aircraft carrier called the USS Natoma Bay that was stationed in the Pacific during World War II. In fact, it was involved in Iwo Jima, and it lost one pilot there, a young man named James Huston. James Huston's plane crashed exactly the way that James Lineger had described, hitting the engine, exploding into fire, crashing into the water, and quickly sinking. Like with most of these cases, it faded away. By the time he was 5 or 6 or 7, which is typical. But it was certainly there, quite strong for some time, the researcher concluded. And that is the end of this article. Now, this is definitely an interesting article because here you have doctors and scientists saying that they believe that reincarnation is real. Now, they don't really provide any proof for that, but what they say is that your consciousness is energy that is in your body but is not part of your body. So it's a separate thing. And when you die, that energy escapes your physical shell and goes off into the universe. And what they are theorizing is that at some point that energy can find another body to go into. Almost like a possession. But they're the only thing there, basically. So once that energy gets back into a fresh body, then they live again. And they still have the memories of their past life when they're very, very young. Now, the example they give here is a little 2-year-old boy. And to me, that is fascinating that this story comes from a 2-year-old boy. Now, you might say, well, kids are always making crap up, so who knows, right? But think about that. A little 2-year-old boy told his father that he was a pilot and that he had died in a plane crash. He told his father that he had been shot down by the Japanese, that he took off of boats, right? So he was on an aircraft carrier of some sort. And he even said the name of the boat and the place where he died. And then when you check the history, it lines up perfectly. Now, how in the hell would a 2-year-old even know what the hell Iwo Jima is in the first place? And be able to get the name of the boat? I'm pretty sure that little 2-year-old kid isn't watching History Channel and taking notes in order to craft some elaborate fake story. So that is a compelling piece of evidence that backs up what these scientists are saying. That they believe that could be proof of that energy, right, coming back into another body. Now, whether it is the only energy in that body or whether it simply enters into another person and lives for a little bit of time before it goes away again or something. I don't know exactly how it works. I don't think really anybody does at this point. But there has to be a reason why that knowledge is forgotten after the child grows up a little bit. is that energy still with the new body? Or does it dissipate again? Could that be why the memories go away? Because it dissipates. Or are those memories still there? They're just buried down in the subconscious. That's the other option. Now, the reason I brought up that other option is because there have been cases where people have went into hypnosis and they've done things called past life regressions where they will walk them through their subconscious mind while they are under hypnosis, and they will bring out memories of past lives, and these memories will line up perfectly with events in history and the way people died in history. And we're not talking about, hey, this dude says he was Abraham Lincoln and he can tell you how he got killed, because everybody knows how Lincoln got killed, right? It's easy to look up. We're talking about, hey, I was a Roman soldier. My name was Joe Smolius, and I got killed in this manner at this battle with this regiment. And then they look it up, and sure enough, all the details that can be found line up with the story. It's that kind of thing, where it's just some rando dude. It's not like some super famous dude that everybody knows and everybody knows how he died, so it would be easy to fake. These are things that they would have no way to know. During one of these past life regressions, one person talked about how they used to live on a farm. I believe it was over in either England or Scotland where the farm was. And they even went so far as to say that they hid something on the property. And there was a stone wall on the property, and if you counted so many stones from the end of the wall, and you went down and dug there at the base of the wall, they had buried a package there. So they decided they were going to check this out. So they actually went to the place where the gentleman said that he had lived in his past life, in like the 1800s. And they counted out the stones on the wall, just like they were supposed to, and they dug. And they actually found, wrapped in leather, a little package. Now, it didn't contain anything super important, a few coins and just some like heirloom kind of stuff, like memorabilia kind of stuff of his family and everything like that. So it wasn't like it was a treasure, but it was interesting that they found what he said they would find in the place that he said that they would find it. Now, before this guy had went through the past life regression, he had no idea that he had lived there. These weren't conscious memories. He was having a lot of deja vu when he would see stuff on television that had to do with that area. He would say, man, that looks familiar. I feel like I've seen that before. And so he wanted to see what was going on, so he went and they suggested that he do this therapy. And as I said, when he did the therapy, that's when he discovered that he had lived in England before and told the whole story. They're under hypnosis, and when they checked it out, it was 100% true. Now, there's been a lot of cases like that. Now, the reason I said in the beginning of this episode that this episode might be a little controversial for some, because in the religious community, reincarnation is kind of taboo. You know, if you're talking Jewish, if you're talking Christian, I don't know exactly about the Muslims. I know that they believe a lot of the same stuff we do. They just believe that Muhammad was another prophet. But I'm not sure what their stance on reincarnation is, so I'm not even going to touch it because I don't know. But when you're talking the Jewish religion and you're talking Christians, they believe that you have a soul, and when you die, your soul either goes up to heaven or down to hell. So a lot of religious people will say that reincarnation doesn't exist. I'm not exactly sure what they base that on. The Bible doesn't really touch on reincarnation. I mean, it doesn't really tell us one way or the other if it's true. It could be possible that, as the scientists say, when you die, that essence, that energy, leaves the body and goes back out into the universe. and eventually it comes back and enters another body. And that's how you would explain all the past life memories and all that kind of stuff. One thing is for sure, there's something going on here. There's something to this idea of somehow these people having knowledge of past lives. And it goes further than just having that knowledge, because there are some of these people that have a lot of knowledge of past life, that have gone through the past life regression hypnosis therapies, and they can tell you all kinds of stuff that happened in the past, and they're right about it. But also, an interesting thing is they will say, I was like stabbed in the neck with a sword or something, right? And the interesting thing is they have a birthmark on their neck in the exact spot where they say they were stabbed. And then when they actually check, they see, hey, this dude that they're talking about was stabbed in the neck. And here they have a birthmark in that exact same spot. There's been multiple cases of that as well, where people have had birthmarks in the exact area where they have suffered wounds in their past life. So, in other words, their past life, them, had a scar in that place or a open wound there that killed them, one of the two. And the person now has a birthmark in that exact same spot, which to me is very interesting and has to mean something. That can't be a coincidence. The odds of that just being a coincidence in multiple cases are astronomical. There's just no way that's not important. There's no way that that's not significant. There's no way that that is a coincidence. So what we have to ask ourselves is, what the hell does that mean? Are we talking actual physical leftovers from a previous life? I mean, that's really the best way to describe it. This is stuff that has been carried from one life to the next. Not just memories, which can be in your consciousness, right? That of course you would remember, but actual physical manifestations of wounds from a past life on the current body. That's fascinating. So as I said, I believe that something is going on here with that. It means something. Whether it is full on your soul leaving your body and coming back into another body at some point, or whether it is somehow those memories and that psychic energy still being around and you absorbing it somehow. Because that's another theory that I have on it, that maybe, you know how like some hauntings are just psychic energy, they're just replays. So it's not actually an intelligent spirit, it's just an impression that was left by a traumatic event, and it just keeps replaying itself over and over and over again. Well, that residue, right, is psychic energy. So what if certain people can absorb that energy, and instead of it manifesting as a replay with ghost, it manifests as memories in their mind where they can remember whatever that replay was. Usually it's the death that they can remember. That would be the traumatic event. That would be what would have left that psychic energy. So that makes complete sense. That if these people, like you have empaths that can feel what other people are feeling. You have psychics that can tell you things that happened in the past that they have no way of knowing. They can tell you, some of them, even what you're thinking, what card you're holding up if you're not even having it facing them. There's all kinds of stuff that real psychics can do. Why couldn't one of those things be actually absorbing that energy? That psychic impression, actually absorbing that energy and it manifesting itself as memories. Now, the only problem with that theory, the only thing that kind of makes me wonder about it, is where do the birthmarks figure into that theory? Now, not every case do they have birthmarks that match wounds, but in several they do. To me, that means that it can't be a coincidence. It has to be connected somehow because it's multiple cases. So, how does that apply? Could one of the manifestations of that psychic energy actually have manifested physically as a birthmark on the person? I mean, that's one possibility. If this energy was absorbed in this person when they were still in the womb, okay? They're a baby, they're still in their mama, they absorb this psychic energy, this impression of the traumatic event, and it is still in their formative stage where their body's still being made. So is it possible at that point that it manifests physically? And is that why it's a small percentage of these cases, even though it's multiple cases, it's a small percentage of the overall amount of cases actually have the birthmarks that match the wounds? Is it because those people absorbed that energy while they were still in the womb, where everybody else absorbed it after? I don't know. Like I said, this is all theoretical right now. I'm just trying to figure it out. To me, that kind of makes a lot of sense. Because if you die and your soul goes either to heaven or hell, the Bible doesn't talk about you coming back for another chance. So if you don't get to come back for another chance, then how would you explain it? You see what I'm saying? But if you come at it from the angle of it being psychic energy, that impression, that energy that is left over, that could be absorbed. Because I think that's what hauntings are anyway. Even the intelligent hauntings, I think that that's not actually the person. Like the person didn't die and their soul is hanging out. Their soul is either in heaven or hell. I think that is an impression of that person in a way. Because mankind is a trinity, just like God is a trinity. God is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Man is the body, the soul, and the spirit. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, the soul and the spirit are the same damn thing, but it's not. They're two separate things. The soul is what goes to heaven or hell. That's you. The spirit is like your consciousness, which is what the scientists here are saying is energy and goes out into the universe and looks for another host. So if your quote-unquote spirit is what goes out and can find another host and be absorbed by that host, it could manifest as memories. Very interesting stuff. I'm not sure what the right answer is here, but I think that I got a pretty good theory. So I'm going to throw over to Old Boy and see what he thinks about it, what he thinks about my theory, what he thinks about reincarnation in general, and what he thinks about these cases. So Old Boy, go ahead, brother.
So the first thing I want to talk about is reincarnation. And what my opinion is, I'll tell you guys right now. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm stretching my back, guys. Do I believe it? I won't be surprised it exists. I have a difference of opinion than James does. We all know that on that part. But I do believe it's possible. And actually, there is religions who believe that, especially Buddhists believe that. Reincarnation. There's New Age people believe in reincarnation. I don't know about, like he was talking about Jewish beliefs. I don't know 100%, but I did have a Jewish friend said he kind of did believe in it, but he was not Orthodox. See, there's different parts of Judaism, and some Orthodox, and then there's unorthodox, and he didn't believe. I think he was more unorthodox, so he kind of believed it. He also believed in aliens. He also believed in all kinds of other stuff. So Christians usually don't. Catholics usually don't. I can't talk for other religions. I do know Wiccans kind of do, and pagans, they kind of believe that. do I believe in it? I think there's a possibility because I believe that I've lived other lives because I've known I've been to other places. I know I've been there and I knew where stuff was at. I've never been there before in my life, but it just felt like I was there before and I lived there like it was at home. I have that thing with LA a lot, Hollywood. I feel like I'm at home when I go down there. I don't know why. I just had this feeling like I've been here before and I know where stuff's at and it feels familiar. And I get it every time I go down there. But I never really felt like I've lived other lifetimes except a couple times in my dreams. And I never felt like, all the time, but sometimes I felt like I've had deja vu where you've done this before. And it was a different kind of body, a different kind of feeling. So I kind of believe there is a possibility it exists. And it could be true because I've talked to people who said like they've remembered stuff they've done and like it was by the T and they would show me examples. Like they would say, they show a picture of somebody they were supposed to be, and then they would say people's parents, and they had proof of it because they actually documented this stuff that they have been another person, and they have a scar like James is talking about. The guy had a scar where that supposedly he got hit, and I believe that. My wife believes it. She's a big person in reincarnation. She believes we've been together throughout time in different eras in life. She especially thinks she was from the 17 and the 1600s. She loves that era. She always has a thing for it and always has. I do too. And I believe that we've lived in different lifetimes, but that's here, say religious wise, I just believe in altogether there's a possibility. It's not impossible. It would be very interesting if it was real because think about it, guys. That means there's a part of you that keeps living on. I mean, kind of, you think about it, you kind of do if you have kids. You still have a part of you that lives on and your family and everything. So you really never truly 100% go away. If you guys think about that, and that's something you guys need to think about it, because think about it. Every time you have a child or somebody in your family has a child, your blood is still it might get thinned out more and more down the line to like 10% or 5%, but there's a piece of you still going. If you have kids like me and James do, we're still going. We have family members that have kids. So my line's kind of weird because other than my mom and my daughter, my mom was adopted. So I don't really know my whole family. My real dad was never really in my life. I've tried to contact him a couple times, but he never really cared. And he was an alcoholic, so no big deal, no big loss, guys. He never really was there. I had a great stepdad. I consider him my real dad now. He was in my life most of my life anyway, so he did a better job than my don't want to get into that, but my stepdad was pretty much my real dad, in my opinion. He was just a better person. But I've always never felt like I belonged in this era of time because I've always felt like an older soul, if you guys understand what that means. Like and James, I think, kind of can relate to this. We've talked about this before, that we were born in the wrong eras. Like we needed to be born more in the 18 and 1700s, like Brothers Grimm, really going out hunting, stuff like this. And that's the kind of life we have. We live with an honorable life where, we would be out hunting, stuff like this. We always talk about, but not just sitting at home talking about it. When you're in it, this century and time, you don't need, we can only talk about it and theorize it and go out and look for it, but it isn't like you would think. Like you see a movie, we're out with crossbows and knives and swords going out trying to slay a monster or whatever we're doing. We're talking about it online or live on video or something, and we'll go out hunting for it, but it's not what you would be doing in 400 years ago. We'd be a whole different kind of people. Granted, I don't even think James, I don't know, I still think me and James would probably still be friends. It's kind of a weird friendship. We have and I hate to get off of this subject, but we have a pretty weird friendship. A lot of people would never think we would be friends in real life, and because we're so different, but I guess we were. So It doesn't mean just because you're different, you're never going to. Some people get along perfectly fine. Opposites attract, and it's pretty opposite there, guys. But I do believe in reincarnation. I believe it's very possible. I believe that I've lived different lives. Doesn't mean I'm wrong or right, or anybody's wrong or right. I just feel that way. I feel a more connection back hundreds of years ago than I do now. I feel like, honestly, I feel not like in a bad way. I feel like I'm missing something. If you guys understand that, I don't know. Some of you guys at home would understand that. If you do, leave some comments. And I feel like I missed something. Like I'm missing a part of me. I don't think I'm ever going to find it in this life. And that's what I've always felt since I was a kid, like something's missing. I have a weird fascination with back east. I don't like living there, but I always have this thing where I have to be, kind of like where Maine is and kind of like Vermont, like that out in the outdoors kind of house. Like I love the forest. I love all that autumn stuff. And I feel like I used to live that a long time ago. And that's why I'm so into it. And me and my wife talk about it a lot because she believes in this stuff and she believes the same thing. She's got a connection to that lifestyle. And I think we lived it at one time. But I kind of agree with this article. I'm glad we did it because it was something different. We don't really talk about some of this stuff. It kind of gets there to a point where I know somebody's going to get mad. And just so you realize something, guys, just because we're talking about this doesn't mean James 100% believes in it. I 100% believe in it. We're just talking about theories and an idea. So if you have an opinion, that's cool. Leave it to yourself. But please try to reframe attacking people because it's happened a couple times. I've seen it about religion, and not everything is horribly bad. Trust me, if James thought something was bad, he wouldn't put it on the show. He's a reborn again Christian. Doesn't mean he follows that. He just talks about that. I think people get that mixed up. We are allowed to talk about whatever we want. It's just, I think some people want to censor everything, and it's not always bad. We're not saying we're for it. We totally agree with it. And I see a lot of that in the comments. So we usually have a lot of good comments. I'm just saying, just tell me what your opinions are. Tell me if you had lived a different life. If you feel that you had a different life that you lived and for fact, tell us your story. We could bring it up one day. We'll do another show. We always try to do backups to the show we do. And this would be a nice one to do at least one more time. But I'm glad he picked this one because, like I said, I didn't even think we're going to do a show like this, and gave us an idea a couple of days ago, and I'm like, cool, let's do it. So I do believe it. I don't think it's impossible. It's kind of hard for a 2-year-old to fake that and just make up something that, I could understand if he said like, oh, I came from Mars or something, instead of blabbing, but he said something that it's almost impossible he's lying because there's a scar where he said it got hit. And it makes sense. He knows he's talking about stuff that happened, just like in the military thing. I've met somebody who said that he used to think he was from the World War. Well, I think it was one, and he would tell me stuff, and I would look it up, and he would only know that. I mean, it's like you said, you're Abraham, like James said, you know how you died, but if you Tom Schmo Joe, who lived in 1894. And he names everything off. Why would he lie about that? I mean, why would you take that much of a lie to even do that? You would want to be somebody famous, wouldn't you? Hey, I was John Kennedy. Why would you pick somebody random? You know what I mean? You see if you're going to exaggerate something. I don't believe a 2-year-old's lying. I believe that some people are reborn. If you think about it, I think that's maybe why we have a lot of issues. I think they fight. And this is another theory, James. We talk about a lot of things, and maybe that's why people have so much problems in life is they fight something they used to be, and it's so hard to give up, and they're fighting themselves. Maybe that's what the answer is. Maybe they don't know what they really were, and it's just so confusing. Maybe that's why they have life the way they do. They do some crazy stuff or something. Maybe something deep down inside fights them all the time. Maybe that's our conscience. Maybe we were something else and we turned into something totally opposite that we don't want to be. And we always fight like a battle, like throughout life. And that's just a random thought. Maybe you guys want to think about that I know I give it over to James. He can talk a little bit about that, what he thinks about that one. Maybe that's what we always have problems with, is a lot of people go through life and they battle each other, themselves pretty much, because they used to be something and that tries to take over their new body. And it's a constant battle. Like, you know how people live secret lives? They're a totally different person than what you think. Maybe that's what happens. Maybe that's why we have people are really that way. They're just so afraid to tell people what they're dealing with, so they just hide it and bottle it away. But they really have these side alter egos, but it's really something that they used to be. They might have been that person. Like, you have somebody, like, you know, you would think that he just goes home and works and he's out there doing some crazy stuff, like he's a contract killer for the mob, and you would never think that he was. But then one day you realize he says, like, you know, all this time I've always thought I was somebody else, and in the 1800s I used to do this, you know, in the war. And maybe that's what they battle all the time. Maybe that's what they talk about, inner demons, guys. Maybe these are the inner demons of stuff that we used to be. Maybe we're bad or good, and the bad always tries to come out that way. You know, I maybe you guys can understand what I'm saying that way. That's why I'm trying to make it as simple as I can. Maybe that's why we battle so much. So I'll throw it over to James. That's pretty much all I got to say about it, brother.
That's an interesting idea. But really quickly, I kind of quickly went over something before I threw over to Old Boy, and I want to kind of go a little deeper on it, because I know what's going to happen with this show. You're going to have some people that are Christians that are just flat out going to say, well, reincarnation doesn't exist, because when you die, you go to heaven or hell. And I want to take a minute to explain this so that you can understand that reincarnation does not, or at least my theory here that I've laid out, does not in any way go against what the Bible teaches you. As I said, mankind is a trinity, just like God is a trinity. We have our body, our soul, our spirit. Now, if you've been on this journey with us for quite a while, then you will remember the What Are Demons and Where Do They Come From show that I did. Now, on that show, I went really in depth on explaining what demons were, where they came from, all of that stuff. If you remember correctly, demons are the disembodied spirits of the giants, the Nephilim. When the Nephilim died, their spirit was left over. They did not have a soul, because only God grants a soul, and they were considered as an abomination. So they were not given a soul. They had a body because their mother was human. She had a body. And the angel had a body. So they got a body. The mother, who was human, had a spirit. The angel has a spirit. So therefore the offspring had a spirit as well. But even though the mother, who was human, had a soul, the father, who was an angel, did not. So the giants did not have souls. Therefore, when they died, their soul couldn't go to heaven or hell. All that was left over was their spirit, which wandered the earth looking for another host. That is what possession is. Now, that's a very oversimplified, brief version of that show. There's way more to it. So if you have not seen that episode, go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/James Hershey Jr., and look for What Are Demons and Where Do They Come From. On that episode, I go so far, so deep. And you will have so much information, and you'll know exactly what demons are, where they come from. You'll know all about giants. You'll know about vampires, all that stuff I cover. So just like with the giants, when they died and their spirits were still hanging out, when we die, our body goes into the ground or into the fire, one of the two. Our soul goes either to heaven or to hell, depending. And our spirit is left here, wandering around. Now there's debate whether or not your spirit has any actual intelligence or conscience at all. I think your spirit is more of a psychic impression of you. It is leftover energy of you. But your actual consciousness, your actual thoughts, your feelings, that's your soul. That's what goes to heaven or hell. What's left behind here, your spirit, is an imprint of you. That is what people might see after you've died. They might see your ghost. I believe that's what ghosts are, is simply the spirits of people that have died. So if your spirit, that energy, is left behind, and if somebody comes along who has psychic abilities, whether they know it or not, and they're able to absorb that energy, and this is going to be something they don't even realize they're doing, okay? Then what you might be left with is memories of that past life. Now, they're not going to be conscious memories all the time because you didn't live them. They're going to be buried there in your brain. So when you go for this hypnosis and they dig down deep into your subconscious, they find these memories that you've absorbed. And the only way they can explain it is that was your past life. You lived that life. Because you have those memories in your subconscious. Like you did it. Even though it wasn't you. Now, if this takes place when you are still in your mother's womb, that you absorb this energy, I believe that is when you could have the birthmarks formed that match the wounds, the physical manifestation of that past life. I believe that probably happens when those memories, that energy, is absorbed while you're in the womb. Now, nothing about what I've just said contradicts anything in the Bible. The Bible doesn't really touch on your spirit, where it goes when you die. It talks about your soul. It talks about not talking to spirits and stuff like that and not doing magic and all those kind of things. But it doesn't really go into a lot of detail on it. So there's nothing really that contradicts what the Bible says. So for all the Christians out there, chill out. It doesn't mean that you die, your soul hangs out and goes into another body and you live again as another person. Now that's what they're saying reincarnation is. That's what like the Hindus believe and people like that. But my theory here is not that. My theory is that what is left over is a psychic impression of you. That energy is left, which is exactly what the scientists are saying. And it can be reabsorbed. So my theory matches the scientist theory. I'm just explaining it in a way that it could fit what the Bible says as well. So with that out of the way, the last thing I want to talk about is something that was absolutely destroyed with this article. And that is the theory that atheists have that there's nothing after this. That you are born, you live your life, and you die, and there's nothing after that. That you're just gone. You don't exist anymore. It's just blackness or whatever. There's nothing. That has been completely and utterly destroyed by this article. Because think about this. You have Christians. You have the Jewish people. You have the Buddhists, you have the Hindus, you have pretty much all the major religions of the world. All agree that you have a soul that lives on after you die. Here also in this article, we have science saying the same thing. I've read multiple articles on this. I've covered some of them in Paranormal News. I've even done some on Staring before, where scientists are talking about they believe that the human body has a soul that is separate from the body that goes on and exists after you die as energy. I've covered it multiple times on multiple episodes of multiple different shows. So science 100% believes that you are more than just your body. That inside your body, there is an energy force that is actually you, that is separate from your body. And when you die, that energy leaves your body and goes back to the universe. So science is agreeing that you have a soul and that there is life after death. So really, an atheist has no leg to stand on anymore. It used to be they would say, well, I believe in science, and science says, well, guess what, man? Science is now saying that there's life after death and that you have a soul. So every single religion and science itself has told you now that you are wrong. That there is life after death. That you do go on after this. So if we know that this isn't the end, we have to ask ourselves, what is next? Now, I as a Christian believe that you either go to heaven or you go to hell, depending on whether or not you're saved. And we've had those kind of conversations on this show before. Other religions believe other things. But one thing we all agree on is that death is not the end. So instead of all of us arguing about what comes next, there's plenty of time for that. We do it all the time anyway. As a society, we argue constantly about these things. But I don't want that to be the focus right now. Let's not argue about what comes next. Instead, let's kind of flip this and look at it from a different perspective. And realize this is proving that death is not the end. You live on after this life. Whether you live again, whether you go to heaven or hell, whether your energy just goes off and dissipates into the universe. Either way, you're still around. This is not the end. That should bring comfort to everybody who's afraid to die. Because that means death has no sting anymore. Because even if your physical body dies, you live on. The question is, what do you live on as? I have my beliefs, old boy has his, I'm sure you have yours. I'm not going to argue with you about it. I'm just going to tell you that I love you. And that I hope that someday, if you're not already saved, that you get saved. Because I don't want to see you go to hell. Now, you might not believe in that. And that's up to you. That's your choice. I'm not here to argue with you or to tell you you're wrong. I am here to tell you that I love you. And I hope that this brings you some sort of comfort, knowing that you don't have to be afraid of death. Now, in my religion, as a Christian, I'm saved. I'm going to paradise when I die. I'm going to heaven. So that's going to be amazing. Now, I believe that if you're not saved, you end up in hell, and that sucks. And I don't want to see anybody do that. So I would just say, look into it. You know, it's a really simple process. All you have to do is believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins. It's a gift. Accept the gift. Accept Jesus into your heart. Make him your Lord and Savior, and you're saved, and you get to go to heaven. That's all there is to it. But as always, the choice is yours. I'm going to love you either way. Old Boy talked about how it's kind of interesting that we're such good friends because we are completely different. I am a pastor. I'm a Christian. I was also a scientist. I've worked in science in my life. I was a Mensa kid. I have an IQ over the genius level. I'm not the kind of person that usually you would think would get along with somebody like Old Boy. Old Boy is a pagan. He's more of a fly by the seat of his pants, bull in a china closet kind of dude. You know what I mean? I'm a lot more measured and more cautious, and I think things through a lot more. We are opposites in just about every way. And I don't mean any disrespect when I say that. That's the way I see it. You know, we're two different people. But what we have in common is respect. I show Old Boy respect, and he shows me respect. And that should be a lesson to everybody out there. If you can get an old redneck pastor and a California badass pagan to love each other and be best bros, any of us can get along. It's all about respecting each other and loving each other. And that's the secret to life right there. So that being said, I'm going to throw it back over to Old Boy and let him give his shout-outs, and then we will wrap the show up.
Thank you, brother. I hope everybody enjoyed this show I did. Thank you for listening to us on Parax Radio every Sunday. You guys want to listen to all our shows, new ones, old ones, go subscribe to James Hershey's YouTube page. If you guys have any comments, let us know. Give us some suggestions of what you want to listen to. It's the first week of February, guys. It's a new month and a new year, and so we'll see where it takes us this year. Well, one thing we will tell you is Staring in the Abyss will always be here. Remember that. We are never going anywhere. You'll be able to hear us forever. As long as YouTube lets play for videos or shows, they'll be on there. Maybe one day when we're gone and dead or whatever has happened to us, you guys can remember. Remember those guys? For a whole hour, they talked about some interesting things. See, a lot of people don't realize the way our show runs is we go and we look things up. Not as much as James does, but he does look things up more than most people do. And I look up some of this stuff and I just run with it. And then James is just the one who just knows what he's talking about. He does study this, guys. And I know people, you don't know what he's talking. He does, dude. Trust me. He's not a stupid person. You know, I'm just a different kind of person. I'm a different breed of person. We do have the same name, though. That's kind of weird. We do have one thing he was wrong about. We are in every way different. You have the same name, so that is a lot. And we do like crypto and ghosts and stuff, so we do have that in common. So remember that. And we also have a lot of honor. So there is stuff we do have in common, but I think that's why it works, guys. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. If you guys want any shirts or COVID mask or blankets, he'll tell you where to go in a minute on the site we have. You guys want something special, let us know. We'll make it for you. If you want us to autograph it, send it to us. We'll autograph it and send it back to you. So I hope you guys have a good night. Misfits, sugar ladies, monster hunters, demon lovers, I love you and blessed be. And remember, keep careful because no one else is going to do it for you. Do it for yourself. Bye, guys.
And now it's time for the shameless plugs. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. That's where everything is. You got every episode of Staring. You've got every episode of Tales from the Abyss, the TV show we do. There's paranormal news videos. I started doing a new series where I am presenting all of the declassified CIA files about UFOs and aliens. And that already is amazing. I've done 2 episodes so far, and I've already proven that we received messages from aliens, and it was covered up by the government. It's some amazing stuff. You're definitely going to want to check that out if you haven't seen it yet. It's on the YouTube channel. Also, I'm putting up like some different audiobook stuff of books on mythologies and lore and stuff like that. Some fascinating stuff. I have a lot of knowledge on these things because I've studied a hell of a lot on these things. And I thought one thing that would be interesting would be to share some of that knowledge and some of that source material with you. So I've tracked down a lot of these audiobooks of some of these books that I actually own. And I've begun putting them onto the YouTube channel so that you can listen to them and hear the stuff for yourself. So that's on there. Bunch of cool stuff. It's 100% free. So please go subscribe and enjoy it. Share it with your friends. Let's try to get that thing moving. Because we were suppressed quite a bit by YouTube, because we did several shows where we talked about things that YouTube did not want us to talk about, and they kind of cut our subscribers and they cut our recommendations when they would recommend a video and stuff like that. They didn't let people know when they were coming out, so it's hurt the channel quite a bit. So if you guys could share it around and stuff, that would be wonderful. The merchandise store is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. That's where all the merch is. Multiple different designs, multiple different products. There's all kinds of stuff there. If you're into merch and you want to wear some staring gear and support the show, that's a great way to do so. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with us every week. I want to thank you for the comments and just all the support that you give us. We really, really appreciate that. And until we speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.